Bottom of the hour of 7 o'clock. I'm glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. For those that are just joining us on this very second day of Morning at NTV in 2025, which is the 7th of January, a warm welcome. It's always a good thing to have all hands on deck, especially in a year that things are going to be very, very dramatic. That is in politics, the economy, but apparently also on the social front, because Ugandans love this all-round way of life. If the politics is squeezing at any one point in time and the wallets do not afford, they find a way of creating a little bit of fun so that things can move. Maybe 2025 can be fun as well as productive in equal measure. We are going to get on with our Kickstarter and understand what Uganda needs to do in order to maintain a macroeconomic management that is prudent. 2025 and the forecast. With me in the studio, I have the seasoned economist, Fred Muhumuza and John Tenywa. These should be able to help us, especially if we have a fledgling opinion on what could happen in the country in 2025 as we prepare for the elections in January 2026. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year, our viewers and listeners out there.
Happy New Year. I was asking Priscilla earlier that when January is inching forward, when do we stop saying Happy New Year?
I don't know, but I think as long as I haven't seen somebody.
If you see them in March,
I will still wish them a New Year.
Interesting there.
But then maybe we begin to wish an old year. Because we'll have grown old.
Okay. All right. I'm glad that you've made time, and it's good to see you in 2025. Coming off 2024, that was, especially in most circles, not the very best of years. There must be a little bit of optimism starting this particular year. If you don't mind, Doctor, let me begin with you. What didn't happen or suffice in 2024 that ought to work out? It could be as a country, but also you could speak for the average Ugandan, especially those that are buried in the private sector and also the corporate landscape.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think talking about the year, as we always say, it's just a time for reflection. But depending on the nature of your own business, you may find that your year is actually in October. If you're a coffee farmer, that's when the season will begin. That's
when the season begins.
If you're a cattle person, it is when your cow gives birth, because now you expect some milk. So we sometimes look at this December, January as if so many things are going to turn around. But for each individual person, you have your own cycle. There is a business person who stocks Christmas things. That one has, their period has passed. There are those who are looking forward to schools. So if I'm a school owner, I'm really looking forward to February when schools open. You'll see many of them trying to advertise. They want to inform people their schools exist. So you're really watching whether the admissions will come through. The children you had will come back. The teachers who are paying, the parents who are paying fees in one go would still do that, because you need to start your school. So at individual level, we need to be looking at these cycles of a year, new year, and an old year with caution, depending on what exactly is your lifestyle pattern and your lifestyle cycle. What is it that you planned to do that you haven't been able to accomplish? Don't get into a frenzy of spending because December has come.
Because December has come.
And then you begin to see what they call the January blues. Your salary is all finished. No, it was just another month coming and another, and it's just another sun rising and setting.
Interestingly, so that's how it sounds. Another month. But it's actually not just another month.
Yes, for many people, and that's how they make mistakes, or that's how you really lose out your entire year.
That is right.
So we need to be looking into these things with reality. The economy is on. If the economy wasn't good for you last year, maybe it is also threatening not to be good this year. This year has elections coming. Are you in that cycle that you print election materials? Are you in the cycle of the people that the Electoral Commission uses to in the display of registers and what also
civic education?
So civic education. So you need to be looking into those kinds of things. The NGO world 10, 15 years ago, it would be a good season. because they used to go and get donors to fund them civic education and all sorts of things. We have seen that dwindle. So I'm sure the NGO sector is recalibrating. A year like this comes and you may not get all that much money that you would have needed, but you still want to do your civic duty to educate the population.
That is right.
So for me, let's watch it as it comes. Not much of an excitement. It's a new year. There are things that the government has promised to do this year. We have major events happening all the same. A transition from Umeme to Uganda Electricity Distribution Company. That has significant implications on how we manage that transition. Knowing very well that Umeme was largely funded through the stock exchange. It was a private company that would collect through the tariff.
Great.
Now you're getting into a government entity which will be looking at the government budget to finance it, and then it can recover through the tariff.
All right.
But that comes after you have done some investments. We hope they will get the money to do that.
Great. We shall be, of course, looking in a little bit more detail on that transition that is Umeme. But John Tenyua, from what your point of view, I'm sure you do share the realistic assessment that Dr. Muhumuza has just offered us. But when you look at the youth, and the reason is simple, you are very youthful. 2025 should be a year that offers both opportunities and challenges, challenges that can be used in the best possible way in order for the youth to be able to gain everything that they need to gain. How do you look at things from your vantage point?
I think I'll start with the normal cliche that is known, that everyone says new year, new me, that they look at the new year as an opportunity to start afresh. Sure. They look at the new year as a new period to do things that maybe they did not do in the previous year. As Doctor says, that it's also looked at as a reflection that within this time, as things are now starting to let me give an example of like work. People are now going back to work. Businesses are resuming normally. It's usually a time to reflect upon what happened last year, and then upon looking at what you're seeing ahead in this new year 2025. So I believe I would also call it a cycle, a new cycle for many. Although most people tend to give up to their goals because they see maybe every year they have not been attaining them, I consider a new year as a cycle of fresh things, to understand how to do what did not work, how can I do it better. I see it as an opportunity to start afresh. I see it as an opportunity to look at things differently, to learn new things, to move forward. So me, I would say the new year presents a lot of opportunities, though it also comes with its own challenges.
That's right.
So we have to be ready and prepare ourselves, know what we want, and go for it.
All right, Doctor, the Uganda Bureau of Statistics just gave us a report the other week in which it offered a little bit of cautious optimism as far as economic fundamentals are concerned. The fact that annual inflation decreased to 2.9%, the shifting economic conditions that affect consumers and businesses nationwide are things that we cannot afford not to pay attention to, especially when it comes to the fact that, like you said earlier, there are some who are looking at October if there are particular farmers of a crop. There are those who are looking at a different month. If you were to put your finger on the pulse of the economy right now, where should we look and pay more attention in order for us to not reach October or end of 2025 and say, we should have seen that coming?
I think ultimately if you follow Keynes economics, and which for me is a basic thing, the drive of economic growth is household private consumption. And when you look at the Ugandan economy, that's about 69 to 70% private consumption. Now you want to put your thrust there. It's nice to have a car with nice tires, a nice shaft, but the real drive of the car is the engine. Yeah. And little wonder cars are rated by the engine. You see a 4.8 cc, you see a 1.4 cc. So the engine of this economy is household consumption.
Household consumption.
Now we need to be looking there, because even when you set up industrial parks, I'm not going to set up an industry if I don't see a market. And these are some of the challenges we are facing with the electricity. People thought the electricity challenge is about the transmission. But we said even where we have already transmitted and delivered, Higenya and Muhumza's houses are already connected on electricity.
That's right.
But how much electricity are we consuming? So you want to look back and say, what is the source of household income out of which they can save and consume? Because even if you go to a bank and the bank wants to lend you, a genuine bank would be saying, what is the nature of business you do? Who are your buyers? Because I'm not looking at your title. We call that a fallback position. In the event anything happens. But first of all, you want to say, what is the nature of business you are doing? And as we said earlier, for school owners, especially private schools, they will be saying, are those children going to come back? Of course, the children want to come back. Will the parents pay? Some parents will send a cheat, others will do so. It's all sitting on what are we doing to boost household consumption. And that was the thrust of Paris development model in all its 7 pillars. But now, if you do focus only money that has been given to these individuals, you have given them a myoga, you have given them so many things, and the health system is not functioning for them. The education system is not functioning. The road infrastructure is not working. The household is not going to be given the thrust to gain that momentum. So if you still look at a number of households in Uganda that live below $1 a day, 20%, that's close to 9 million households, spending less than, per person, less than 4,000 a day. If you look at our capitation that we're putting into education, it's really not helping the household to say government has offered free education, focus on something else. So if you look at the cost of transport, moving around villages, whether it is urban areas. So the household has a lot of strain, and you want to zoom in on that household and target it. To say what are the real efforts and government policies that are targeting the household directly and indirectly. It's a good thing to do a road out there, but some household, that road just passes through their village. They have no means of linking to it. Now that is the final last mile, as we say, that you want to address. When I wake up at a household in Bukedea, a household in Amuria, household in Hoima, household in Kobe, wherever it is, what are the burdens of this person? Because that is 70% of your economy. And that is why you generate your exports. That's why you generate the industrial demand to begin with. What is it that you can do to leverage that household?
I'll be asking you that question, so put together exactly how you would advise the Minister for Finance and all the attendant technocrats in coming up with a policy that actually attends to that particular problem. John Tenyoa, when Doctor speaks about the household, many might want to look at the urban household and make that the threshold, but it is not. It is the household in the lesser urbanized areas and mostly the rural areas of the country. And we've seen over time many young men and women have chosen to depart either to the cities and urban centers. Others have chosen to fly out and go to these labor migration enclaves in the Middle East. I do not know how you look at what can be done to recalibrate this particular arrangement in order to ensure that the households retain the active labor that is needed to spur production at that level.
Yes, I'll just build from what Doctor has said. When he started, he talked about the Keynesian economics, and the Keynesian economics rose majorly in the 1930s when we had the global economic depression, where we found that the demand was so less that could not meet the supply that was available. So he came in to say that in one way to reduce unemployment in the nations or in this country or America was to try to solve the demand related issue. So the Keynesian economics is much more of demand related or the demand side related, which means that you have to stimulate demand of the individuals in the country. And once you have this demand that is available, it means that it will attract the supply into the country, maybe foreign direct investments or any other thing, or the people who are going to start now to be the employers of these people. So as we build on the demand side, I think it's also notable to consider the supply side on the other equation, which would say that how do we make sure that we create employment for these individuals? How do we make sure that we create avenues that will help people to get jobs? As you know, that the youth unemployment in the country is very high, and more people graduating means that there are more people who are looking for jobs, and there are few people who are actually giving out these jobs. So it is of necessity that we also consider the supply side of this equation. How do we create those industries? How do we create those avenues for these youth to have the jobs that they need? And once they have the jobs that they need, they have the income that will stimulate the demand. So all of these things work together in a way that if you have more income as a household in the rural areas, if you create opportunities for these people in the rural areas, it means that they will have more income to demand for services, for any other commodity that is not necessarily basic in nature, but now that goes beyond the basic or necessities of life. So I would consider us looking into that matter, that as we are looking into the demand side, also we balance the supply side.
Okay. That one is very interesting, especially allow me to stay with you just for a moment on that, and I want us to be very specific on the kind of opportunities that the Ugandans today, especially the younger ones, are willing to take on. The debate has been that, for example, on social media, somebody can say Facebook has been off for a while, and that has significantly affected many youth and in terms of being productive. But if you were to put down numbers and calculate the amount of productivity that youth were bringing on board at the time when there were no restrictions on Facebook vis-a-vis when the restrictions are there, can we get a picture so we can understand is it the internet that is the trigger for productivity among the youth? Is it availing them funds to begin income generating activities, or is it educating them better so when they come out, the talk about being job seekers and not creators can finally be put to rest?
I'll mention that one thing that you should note out is that while the information and communication technologies are very relevant to this society, to the economy of Uganda, and while we see that internet is actually spurring productivity to tenfold, one thing that you should know is that there is a very huge digital divide in the country. So now that goes back to the question of the urban and the rural. It's usually the urban people who have access to internet because the infrastructure is accessible. But if you go down deep to the villages, you'd find that you're having issues with network. There is no even access of electricity to charge your smartphone.
Basic communication.
Yes, so those youth who are there are constrained to use the internet. So where am I trying to bring this out is because that you cannot say that the technology or the internet is the one that is trying to impede the productivity of the youth. No, yes, on one hand, if technology is developed and infrastructure is made accessible to the rural areas, this could be a very, very great conduit that would help in developing the rural people to use in increasing their productivity. But the productivity now comes from the sectors that we have in the country. As you know, most people are employed in the agriculture sector, and this sector employs more than 66% of the population in the country. This means that the sector, if you're to look at it vis-a-vis the production, I'll give an instance. A report by the International Growth Center showed that we are operating at less than 40% of our attainable potential. That means that our productivity as a country, that means that our productivity vis-a-vis the people who are employed in the sector means that we have very many people employed in the sector, but does not amount so much to the productivity that we have, since we see most people are in subsistent agriculture. So how do we do that structural transformation and increase the productivity of the youth looking at those sectors?
Doctor, what John Tenyoa talks about is something that can be achieved in the long term. trying to understand the dynamics of the structures and stuff like that. But right now, the Ugandan needs some immediate solutions to the challenges that they face in order to demand better, so that we can spur, you know, the kind of exchange and the transactions that will, at the end of the day, enable everyone to get a bit of this cake that we call money. If I were to go in a war room right now, where the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance and these tenant departments are sitting and trying to understand, figure out, what do we do, what do we twitch, what do we plug out, what do we plug in, the conversation ought to be very clear, especially from the top persons, including Minister for Finance, the Permanent Secretary, the President. But it seems the politics has taken over, including, rather, even the PSST has spoken about the fact that he's grappling with a lot of interference when it comes to some of the decisions that he does make, but he insists he's making progress. What should these technocrats be talking about? You've had an opportunity as a researcher and as a consultant to interface with them. Take us through this particular process.
Yeah, I think it's really, as you've mentioned, the space of the technocrat is occupied by the politician at the same time, and the politician is the decision maker.
Is the decision maker.
And but the technocrat is supposed to provide the technical information on which
the politician
to make a decision. Now, they might make a decision. Sometimes you give them a range of options, and really it's a calibration to say, in the event they choose this, this is how we will proceed.
How we proceed, yeah.
In the event this doesn't come through, how do we go around? But as I said, while all these high-level conversations and discussions and decision-making is going on, you don't want to lose sight of the household. Netanyahu, Americans, drones, all those things may be flying in space. But there's a foot soldier that Israel has deployed. There's a foot soldier that is in the Eastern DRC. That person must have his boots well done. He must have his food. He must have his bullets in his gun, and this gun must be functional. So ultimately, you want to zoom in, as you said, what are the specifics? Now, and where are your options? If you look through the exports we are being given up to at least September of this year, government documents will tell you we exported to DRC about $756 million worth of goods. We exported to Tanzania 200, but we imported from Tanzania $1.9 billion worth. So the shortfall between Uganda and Tanzania is 1.7 billion in favor of Tanzania.
In favor of Tanzania.
Now, meaning that Tanzania is sending things here at the disadvantage of a Ugandan household. But there's a Ugandan household sending goods worth up to $700 million into Congo. Now you want to zoom in and say, which are these households? You don't just want to be discussing trade balance in abstract at that high level. Nature. So you want to come down, like we've been now working on coffee farmers. How do you help this coffee farmer? The information we have, for all the efforts we have done giving farmers seedlings to plant, some of the trees we have given them are giving them ½ a kilo per tree. And yet the National Agricultural Research Organization and others are saying, no, it's possible to get 3 kilos per tree. Now, that is where it comes to say, it is the same tree, but you can actually increase its yield 6 times.
6 times.
Now, how do I address that particular problem at that household level? Because the household land and labor will not increase. But now by just changing the tree from A to B, you increase their incomes. And remember, this is the global price. The global price is not about to shift. This farmer would have been given a thrust. We would hit our 20 million target, but also, as I said, the household income comes through. Look at the jobs. A lot of people are earning jobs by the Bureau of Statistics, less than 200,000 a month. That is literally 7,000 shillings a day. And this is the breadwinner. So that breadwinner, if he has like 5 people in the homestead, and all he brings home is 7,000 a day, how do you address that? It's not just about jobs we're looking for, but decent jobs, which is what he's saying, the productivity. So now people are just coming to work for the sake because there is nothing else to do. Let me go and work. But they are not seeing a future. Now, how do you bring hope?
That mentality, let me hang in there.
Yes, let me hang in there because at least that job pays the rent. But now he still has to grapple to keep the child in school, to do this. A population that is that kind of frustrated in life and just hanging on by the skin of their teeth, as they say, is not going to cause the development you want to bring. So while we are having those discussions at high level, Can we do a standard gauge railway, the Jinja Expressway? Don't forget, in between Kampala and Jinja, there is 1 million plus of households in there. How are you addressing their need? Because it is them that will make the Jinja Expressway viable.
That's right.
By demanding whatever that road is bringing. So let's zoom in. Let's think specific. Let's not ignore those detailed things of how do you really touch the population.
Reminds me of a story I was reading some time back. Kwame Nkrumah, when he was departing, and he was wondering what had happened to the people of Ghana, that they could not see things the way he saw them.
Yes.
And one of his assistants said, those people want milk. They don't want mega projects. And then he was like, how can they want milk, something so, how can they clamor for the basics when I'm looking at the bigger picture? It's like, that's where the mistake is. You're thinking the bigger picture addresses holistically, yet you need to deal with people at individual level. Gentlemen, it's time to go for a break, but when we return, this conversation will continue, and we shall also look at one of the captains of the economy and the new schedule for the monetary policy meetings and what that means on exactly how things are going to be run. We've known these meetings to be happening monthly, but we're now going to see only 4 in a year. What does that mean? The Bank of Uganda will be part of the conversation when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us. It's the Kickstarter, and we are looking at Uganda as 2025 begins to move forward. There's a lot of anticipation in light of the politics of the day as we inch into the general election that will be happening in 2026, that is January. It means most of the work, including the campaigning, the civic education rollout, is going to be happening this year. And well, some people are saying money in circulation is going to increase as those that want posters, calendars, T-shirts, and all these materials that go with the political campaign begin to, well, afford you a little bit of money here and there. Now, that could also affect inflation, but economists are saying sometimes when things are what they are, you just need to accept and then go slow, because you might, in the words of one, affect the goose that lays the golden egg. Let me return to the studio. I have with me Dr. Fred Muhumuza, seasoned economist. I also have with me budding economist. I am using that word because of your youthful nature, John Tenua. It's a pleasure having you on board. Now, as we inch further, Doctor, earlier you spoke about the umeme transition and how it's going to affect the economy. I just want you to get us up to speed with how this might not happen. What should we look out for? Why should we be concerned?
Yeah, first of all, the concern is electricity is the lifeblood of the economy. So anything that disrupts it, even for 1 second, we all know it. If you have been in a blackout, you know what a blackout means. 1 second and power is back, you're all excited.
You begin cursing while you know.
and that can be very, very dangerous for a manufacturer. Because for them, the systems must run even without any fluctuations.
That is right.
So it is so critical. You imagine somebody is in theater, and this doctor is really relying on that light to get to the tumor, and then electricity is off. So there are certain processes that are that sensitive. So electricity is that critical that you want to have a seamless transition. It's just like, really, you're running and the baton must be handed over without falling. The moment it falls, that team is lost. And you can't turn up and say, but it failed. You must turn up with a stick at the end of the day. So if it falls, you must go and pick it back. So the transition must be seamless. A lot has been done, a lot of meetings, but the meetings have agreed on certain things that require action. Because they will tell you you need a possible about $200 or $270 million to pay out, buy out clause for many. Because remember, they are being invested.
$270
it's close to that. $1 million.
Okay.
Because they have been investing. Now you are sending them away, so you need to pay them for the assets that they are in, because they invested long term. So they would say, over the duration that I'm not going to be around, this investment would have given me so much, and they will need that. Now, if you don't give them that, you need a contingency plan. Do I continue with them? Do I not continue with them? That's number one. Two, even the incoming will need investments to the tune of possibly $50 to $70 million per year to keep this infrastructure running and on. So there are quite a number of moving targets that we need to really handle. the tariff, will it come down, will it not? So for me, it's a question of, can we keep the lights on? Then we can see whether the tariff comes down or not. So that's a major, big one. And you need to have contingency plans. Because remember, Umeme is a listed company. So its image on the stock exchange is what gives its value. Now that is going to go out. So what is going to be the new face and funding source of the UADCL? It's going to rely on the tariff, partly, but also will be relying on the decisions within government to allocate its resources. And the biggest cost on our electricity tariff is basically the generation itself. It takes about 60% of that cost. That is not going to go away that soon. Then there is the transmission itself, which I think is about 20–25%. So you have quite a number of inherent costs that are within the system that now are going to shift to the government cycle. Institutions aside, how fast can you make a decision? How fast can you say, I need new staff, they should be coming in tomorrow? UDCL being a government entity may be bound by procurement things, decision making. There is a board that hasn't sat, they will sit tomorrow, where is the documentation? Now, this is the electricity. Friends, if we need to invest, we must invest. So some of these things are better left to faster decision making cycles. It's just like the military, if they want to operate, the constitution allows them to say, you go and invade, come and inform Parliament. You have a period of up to 3 months to come and tell us what happened. But don't go through the bureaucracy. So I'm watching that space because of the importance of the energy sector to the economy. When
you speak about the bureaucracy, I remember a conversation where one of the officials said that we've had an entire board available with 7 members, but the 8th, who is supposed to be the chairman, is not yet found because the PhDs available are not competent. Interesting there. But hearing Dr. Muhumuza talk about the nature, the important nature of electricity and how that can spur growth. Industrialization is catching up across the country. The parks are available, and there is business that is booming, and the ability for them to produce many of the goods that have over the last few 10 or 15 years have been imported is quite significant development for Uganda. Now, the new tariffs that were announced by the Electricity Regulatory Authority, that I think manufacturers are looking at them and nodding their heads in a little bit cautious manner, but it should be a tariff schedule that allows for each person to stay in business going forward, despite the other challenges. Have you had time to study the tariffs as they were revealed to us, and what that is going to mean for industrialization going forward?
Yes, I think for one, I would say as for industrialization to take place, obviously you need power. And for it to run very smoothly, you need the electricity that Umeme has been generating. And besides that as well, the households themselves need electricity. The small businesses that function also need the power. I'll base from the perspective of I have been a shareholder of some of these Umeme at the stock exchange. I bought some shares. I bought them at about...
You're an investor.
Yes.
I should engage.
I would like to... I love practicing my economics. So I bought them at about 220 shillings per share. And from what we've been hearing is that they're going to buy them from us at around 500 shillings per share, which is a very good increase in the share price. But obviously that means it is a cost to the government. But why I'm bringing this up is because I've been reading I've been joining the annual general meetings of Umeme, reading their financial statements, and from my perspective and how I have, as a household or as a consumer of electricity, how I've been perceiving Umeme is that it was, to a certain extent, a profit running organization, and that it means that it would have to look at the interests of its shareholders as well as it is looking at the distribution of this power. So what does that mean is that while it was providing the services of distributing power, it was also looking at generating profits for its shareholders. If you actually look into the market, it was among one of the companies on the stock exchange that offers a very high interest rate, much way above 15 to 18% per annually, which is above most of the companies that are listed on the stock exchange. But what does that mean? It means that it was profit-oriented in nature. So to me, I would say in my perspective, I have more of a positive outlook that it is now some of these things are being now going to be run by the government. Why? Is that the government, as we know, is looking at providing a service and is not looking at profit. Yeah, making profit. So that would mean that all its considerations are looking at making sure that it extends this service. As you know, not many people actually supplied by umeme. I think not more than 7 million people in the country out of the 48 million people.
There are a lot more sources that are different from umeme. But when you say positivity on account of the transition, there is a certain lethargic nature of service delivery that government comes with. Umeme could have loved to improve the service because it will make profit if the consumer is happy and paying. Government might not necessarily care whether the consumer is happy at that particular point in note. I don't know whether that is anything that we should be afraid of. Just 1 minute.
Yes, I would say it's something that you should be afraid of. It's of a concern, surely, but we should be hopeful that the government should be efficient enough to provide the power that we need. All
right. Hope in Uganda. Doctor, the Bank of Uganda has, as a captain of the economy, has introduced what is very significant. And if I can, let me just consider what the Daily Monitor has this morning. The new schedule for monetary policy meetings, we shall have 4 in a year instead of monthly. And the bank says it's now changing how frequently its monetary policy committee meets to review policy interest rate, that is the CBR, starting immediately. The meeting will happen only 4 times a year instead of the previous 6. Actually, it was held every 2 months. This is very significant because across the globe, economies that are vibrant don't appear to have so many of these meetings and often like to have a significant gathering of these minds together in order to shape what is going to be happening next. Do we see things improving?
Maybe it is a reflection of improving things because when you have a lot of inflation around, you want to keep meeting regularly.
You want to keep meeting, yeah.
So maybe now that has stabilized, they see the need for the 4 meetings, because officially there was supposed to be 2 meetings every month. Partly the reason is you want to give some signal for people to consider the signal.
That's right.
Because investments and the private sector hates a lot of noise. So if you know the governor is going to sit every month and change central bank rate or change something, it begins to bring you uncertainty in your planning. So 2 months really is what had been proposed. Now 4 months is even better. But also it allows you to do grounded research to understand, because we already said there's a transmission mechanism. When you change the central bank rate, it's going to have ripple effects on different investments in the economy.
That is right.
So you want to have some time before you say I'm changing or not changing, to have done good research that even tests what are the long-term, what are the short-term effects, but even to allow the data to come in. Because remember, some of the data we are having, the Bureau of Statistics can't give it to us monthly. It can only come quarterly, because you have quarterly GDP series.
That is right.
So you have a lot more information to make your decision. But also there's sometimes when you say it's just noise in town. Inflation goes up in January. Children are going back to school. What do you expect?
What do you expect?
So,
it's going to happen anyway.
So if you're saying, guys, we sat in December, we're sitting again in April, that noise would have cleared out, and then it's okay. It was, after all, noise of Christmas. It has cleared out. So it's a good, positive thing. We just need to use it very well to make sure the decisions being made are well grounded and being informed, but also private sector to take that and see that now there is a longer window for them not to expect. I hope we will not change and say, hey, wait a minute, inflation shot by 6%, we are back.
Of course, this reinforces the bank's mission to maintain price stability, as well as supporting the country's broader socio-economic transformation goals. I'll give the last word to the erstwhile and budding John Tenywa. Bank of Uganda has not been in the best of positions to share critical significant developments in light of what happened at the end of last year. If I were to ask in a minute, Bank of Uganda right now as it sits, should we see something different 2025? Do you expect a new governor?
For that, I'll leave it to the politicians. Yeah, but as regards to its work, I believe I expect for it to come up with better how it communicates well and how it gives the information. That's building from a doctor's perspective of you need time to collect the data that will inform the research or the report that you give out to the people. And quality data is very imperative in making sure to help you inform your decisions. So if you have the right data, giving it time to study the variables that are at hand, it will help you in making better decisions.
Gentlemen, many thanks. It's been a pleasure having your perspective on what the economy is and what the prospects and the forecast for 2025 appears like.
Conscious optimism is the word that everybody should carry.
There we are.
Yes,
all right. Dr. Fred Muhumza, and of course John Tenywa, an economist, they are joining us for the Kickstarter. It will do it for now. However, do stay with us. We are going to go into something that you ought to take note of. Gang-related violence and how it can be addressed, especially among the young people. Stay with us. Priscilla will be up for that.